Hi, this is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and I am here to talk to you about a podcast that I started just about 2 months ago. It's called Lessons Learned. And I hope that if you haven't listened to some of those podcasts, that you'll take the time and check them out. Lessons Learned turns all of our podcasts into an avenue where we can talk about the things that we thought we were going to do in our life that maybe we didn't, or the things we've done in our life that maybe thought we wouldn't. I know that just last week when I celebrated my 71st birthday, I never would have expected that I would be doing podcasting and have podcast clients and have a portfolio of wonderful information for our listening audience. But my life has changed over the years. As a young child, I really thought that I would be married with kids, living in the same community as my parents, and every Friday night, either going to their home for dinner or having them come to our house for dinner. And maybe on Sunday, having typical Jewish brunches with family and friends, including wonderful fresh baked bagels, lox, cream cheese, smoked fish, which I don't like, but I would have it for those who do. But that's not the path I took. My path changed. And it changed because I met somebody who took me down another path, and I agreed. I followed that path with my first husband. And it took me away from my family and friends, and it took us down a road that gave me some experience that I think that has brought me to where I am today. Now, sadly, that marriage did not last. We did have a child together, and we still cherish that young adult man today. However, our relationship was not made in heaven, and therefore it was not going to be all roses and daisies. So I know the experience of being a divorced woman with a child, and a divorced woman who has had to fight for the custody of her child when he was younger. A road I never expected to go down, but I did. And those experiences have made me stronger and more grateful for the people in my life today, including my ex husband and my adult son. But that's not where I'm taking this to. Lessons learned is about having a conversation that sometimes just goes deep into your gut, and it makes you feel something, and it makes you realize that you can have all the plans that you want. You can have vision boards. You can make lists day in and day out. But it doesn't mean that something might creep into your life and change the path that you're on. As my friend Candace Pollock shares in her podcast, The Intentionality Gurus, as a personal and business coach, she'll say to me every once in a while, now you're at that fork of the road. What are you going to do? Are you going to remain stuck? Or are you going to go to the right? Or are you going to go to the left? Or are you going to create a different path? And if so, well, what is that path? And what is taking you there? And how do you feel about it? Feel it. Most of us go through life not really feeling the steps we are taking. And I believe lessons learned allows us to take those steps and see what is all around us. Walking through life with blinders on is not a fun place to be because you miss out too much. So, take for instance today, it's Tuesday, March 9th, when I'm recording this here in the suburbs of Cleveland, Ohio. And it's a beautiful, sunny, almost spring day. It's gorgeous out, but I could be wearing my blinders not looking out the window at all, not seeing the sunshine, not looking at the app on my phone that tells me the temperature. And maybe I would think it was a cold, gray, dreary day in Cleveland, Ohio. But when I take those blinders off, I can see so much more. And seeing so much more is why I'm doing lessons learned. We're talking about so many different subjects, from women's health issues, even men's health issues. Do you know that sometimes a doctor doesn't have all the tools to diagnose you correctly? And sometimes we go through weeks, months, or years trying to figure out why we don't feel good. And sometimes it can take that long for the studies to come out, the information to come out, for our doctors to understand. But if you're not happy with your diagnosis, or you think there's something that else you need to do, don't stop at the fork of the road and don't and refuse to look right or left. What you want to do is take a new path, look for information, search it out. Today we're very lucky, but sometimes not so lucky. We have the internet. And sometimes when we do those searches in Google to find out about our ailments, we scare ourselves into a panic, thinking that we have some rare disease. In other cases, when we do that research and we find out that maybe we do have something that is fairly rare, if we take it back to the professional team that wants to help us get well, they now have something concrete to look at. So don't fear it, but also don't overuse it to scramble your brain and to feel frightened. There also once was a time when I was giving birth to my first son. I was just about 24 years old. I was ecstatic to have my son. I was a new mom. And there was a woman who was in my room with me. Back in those days, private rooms in hospitals were very rare. And she was giving birth to her fourth child. She had three daughters. And she told me she was all of 30 years old. Now I was 24. So, hey, I was this youngster. And I looked over at her at being 30 years old, having her fourth child, thinking, that's old. No, it's not. But that was the generation I came from. Anyways, this was her fourth birth. She wanted a fourth daughter. But you know what? She didn't have a daughter, she had a son. And she chose to name her son Danielle rather than Daniel. And I looked at her with weird expressions, afraid to ask her why. But over the last 50 years, I've learned, you know what? It's none of my business. Name your child whatever you want to name your child. Feel the way that you need to feel. And let's be aware of each other and continue those conversations. It's not for me to judge. Now, have I been judgmental in my lifetime? Absolutely. And will I be in the future? Probably. But I'm trying to change. And I think that's what lessons learned is providing to you, the listener. I once felt like I was the baby sister, assuming that my brothers looked at me as the baby who knew nothing, not as smart as them, not as worldly as them. And you know what? I was just this cumbersome little kid in their eyes. But the reality of it is, that was my interpretation of what they were thinking. The reality of it is that they've seen me as a grown adult. They've witnessed my transformation, even though I didn't see it in their eyes until recently. When I say recently, I'm saying within the last 6, 7 years. We now have become equals, despite the fact that they're boys and I'm a girl, despite the fact that they're older than me. Doesn't make any difference. Our life experiences have brought us together, and our life experiences are all very different. Even being brought up by the same parents, we heard their message similarly, but not exactly the same. And so I want you to take a step back and think about all the people that have influenced you in your life, whether they've influenced you positively or negatively. And try to think about what made their message either positive or negative. Growing up between the ages of 9 and 14, I struggled to be part of the clique. Now, anybody growing up in the late 50s and early 60s probably remember there was always the clique, the in crowd, and some of us were on the fringe and some were so far removed. Well, I was sort of on the fringe because some of the girls in the clique were my friends, but they were my friends independently of their clique. And I thought for a very, very long time that I would never get their approval. And I walked around like that for a long time, going into high school, you know, carrying that grudge against a group of girls who I wasn't even going to high school with. But I saw it in the faces of every person I met. And that discolored my relationships with people. I made assumptions that I never should have made. And I'm glad for the discovery of Facebook so many years later, reuniting with both those elementary and junior high friends and the high school friends, and realizing that it was all in my head. It never came from any of them. In fact, many of them have said that they wish that we had gotten together more often, that they wish that we had been closer. But none of them have had one negative word to say against me. And yet, for many years, that's what played in my head. So, is it normal to hear voices in your head? Well, if you ask a healthcare professional, it depends what those voices are saying. But we all have voices. The voices are our thoughts as we go to do something, whether it be me doing this podcast right now, or going to the grocery store, or taking a time out and cleaning my house. All those choices we have little messages going through our head. So I clean my house daily. Why? Because I hear this voice from my mother that always reminded me, never leave the house without making your bed. Pick up your clothes, put them in the hamper. When the hamper gets full, do the laundry, prepare for dinner. All these things that she taught me are still playing in my head, even though she is now gone 4 years and I'm an adult. But they remind me of the things that she taught me that are important to me. I love doing these podcasts. This is what makes me smile each and every day. But it doesn't mean that there aren't days that I dread one more recording. And the reason I dread it is not because I don't like it, not because I don't enjoy it, but because on those days I've realized I haven't done what is really important and provide myself with self care. I've been more worried about everybody else rather than me. And so, what I've learned, and I'm trying to get better at it, is to look in the mirror and say, Karen, what do you need today? What is going to make you feel whole? Because when I'm feeling whole, I can help as many people that come in front of me. And helping people doesn't mean caregiving, so to speak, but it means being there, being open, being aware, not being judgmental, accepting. Doesn't mean I have to agree with everything others say, but it means listening for the cues, trying to figure out what we have in common, seeing another way of how the world turns. And I'm not talking about the soap opera. So today I want to encourage you, if you're listening, to contact me at New Cleveland Radio, all one word, New Cleveland Radio at gmail.com. And let's share your story. Let's share what you have learned over the years, whether you're a young adult or what they call middle age, or if you are older than that. Tell me what you've learned. Tell me what is so important that can maybe help one other person. We're all living through this pandemic together, and we're all living it differently. Yes, the majority of us are wearing our masks. The majority of us are washing our hands regularly and keeping the germs out. The majority of us are socially separating from each other. And socially separating does not mean that you can't see each other, but you have to do it in a safe and appropriate way. Many of us have had our vaccines, and many more are getting their vaccines. And this is how we can stop the pandemic. But what does the pandemic mean to you? How has it changed you? So many people are out of work. So many people have had to cut back on their work. So many parents have become teachers, even though they don't feel they have the teaching skills, but they have to help their children. And what about the children? I noticed this the other day when I was out of the house working on another project. There was a family wearing their face masks, and in a stroller was this cute little child not wearing a face mask. And that's understandable. And this child is looking at all of us with our face masks on. And I started wondering, what does that child see? They really don't know what we look like. They can't tell if we're smiling or not. And it has to be a very strange phenomenon for them. And I wonder what's going to happen when all of us can safely take our mask away. How are these young children going to react? Because body language is so important in communication. And if they can't read our facial expressions, they have no idea what we're thinking. They have no idea if we're happy. They have no idea if we're in pain. Think about that for a minute. It's going to be very difficult for the emotions of these young children, but they will get through it because you and I are going to be strong enough to help them through it. The other thing I'm noticing wearing those face masks, and I wear mine religiously when I'm out of the house, people don't understand that we have a huge population with hearing deficits. Up until I started wearing the face mask, I didn't realize that I actually was reading lips and watching the tones of others. And now with the face mask on, when I'm talking to somebody, a lot of times their voice is muffled. And even if it's not, depending on their tone, I have no idea if what they're saying is positive or negative. And yet when that mask is taken off, you can see a smirk, you can see a frown, you can see intensity. But with the mask on, we can't. So I think we have to be a little more liberal in our conversations. And when I say that is we have to stop accusing people of deliberately not giving us the information we need because maybe they are, we just can't hear it. And so that means that we all have to be a little bit more responsible, talk slower, more directly. And if you can't hear somebody, we have the right to ask that person to speak up. Now, some of you already know I wear hearing aids. And when I started wearing them about 10 years ago, I really thought that I had to hide the fact that I wore them because I correlated hearing deficiency with getting old. And so did a lot of my corporate fellows in the industry that I was working in. However, you don't have to be a certain age to have a hearing deficit. And my deficit did not come from age. It came from a tumor in my ear that had to be removed, wasn't removed properly, had to go in and do reconstruction. And all that caused deafness in that ear. In the other ear, I was having drainage problems and for years had a tube in that ear. And the tube, even though it helped with those drainage problems, created a hearing deficit. So it had nothing to do with my age or my overall health. It happened. So in the beginning, I covered it up with my hair. But you know what? I don't anymore. Okay. Yeah, my hair is in front of it right now, but not for any vain reasons. Okay. It's just the way I wear my hair. But I do pull my hair back. You can see the hearing aids, and I don't care. It has nothing to do with who I am. In fact, they make me a better participant in the world because I can hear what's going on. Whereas there are many individuals who really need hearing devices and they just refuse to wear them. And this podcast is not about that. It's about acceptance. It's about being the best person that you can be. And we're going to continue to do lessons learned. And I hope that you'll become part of it because we all have something important to share in life. So let's come together. Let's share those lessons. Let's turn negativity into positivity. It doesn't mean that you have to be happy and laughing and smiling all day. But what it means is you need to be able to bounce back. You don't have to walk around thinking there's a black cloud hanging over your head. You don't have to walk around thinking you're not as smart as the next guy because what you know, they may not know. And what they know, you may not know. And together, we can teach each other. So again, contact me at newclevelandradio@gmail.com. Become part of Lessons Learned and know how special you are. Have a great day. Keep wearing those masks until the virus is gone. Have a great day.